Well, we want to welcome you back to this third lesson in the JCI beta course. As an introduction to the materials we'll be introducing this fall to the worldwide community, it's been fun and useful to get the feedback from a number of you on this as we're going forward. And hopefully we'll also be giving you a great deal of value in what we're presenting and a significant discount if you continue to take access to the materials that will be coming out this fall. The point that we've made now 3 times, and for those of you that are just joining us, is that this isn't simply a how to succeed or how to start your business course. There's plenty of those out there. The market doesn't need another one. And as a part of our unique positioning is we're focused on free enterprise warriors, people who understand that their business is important not just to them but to the overall economy. And as we explain in our other materials, our research and our work proves that your success is important not just to you but to many, many others. It's part of the tsunami effect that we explain elsewhere. So we're interested in working with people not only who are starting but those who are striving and those who are actually seeking to thrive in the free enterprise process. Now, we come down to talk about the $1 trillion journey as our rubric for discussing this process, and as we have indicated before, that involves Elm Street players, Main Street players, and Wall Street players, and we have the recording on our site if you've missed that, but that'll explain the context for why this course. And it's not in the sense of an apology, but as an explanation. Some of you listening as our beta listeners are fairly experienced and sophisticated in your knowledge of business, and others of you, this is the first time you've ever tried to go out and create something profitable. So there's a combination here of objectives, and we're trying to hit the high points to show you a lot of the thinking behind our approach to small business. And then as the course is introduced this fall, they'll be tailored to those of you who want more information. In the meantime, for this beta course, we have the Thursday Mind Master that we work through some of the issues, and some of you have availed contacting me individually to talk about your specific problems and needs, and as appropriate, we've signed 1 or 2 NDAs and are glad to do that, but we're giving you our free feedback and cooperation in return for what you're doing for us, following what we call the lean startup approach. Now, just note that one of you, in fact 2 have mentioned, but one of you have asked about the pictures in the back. That was actually a gift from my wife, but if you read the first of the $1 Trillion Journey trilogy, you'll understand that deals with a ship in the harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are made for. We like to use that metaphor to make the point that there's a lot of people that sit in the harbor, and that's fine. But if you choose to be a free enterprise warrior and you take what you're made for and go out and fight the waves and the battles to get there, you're putting yourself in a unique category. And again, our goal is to help you develop the mindset for that process, and they give you the framework and then deliver content that you can hang in that framework that's specifically tailored to your own goals and objectives. And as I've indicated before, and as you'll see, the Stratia 7 is our framework, and there are 7 categories. So far, we've covered the strategic side and the corporate side, and today we're getting into what I oftentimes call the monster in the closet, marketing. I like marketing. I've always loved marketing. I don't know everything I want to know about marketing. No one can know everything there is to know about marketing if you look at it, particularly these days, as we'll talk in today. The material I'm covering literally covers about 12 hours of marketing in our Start, Strive, and Thrive Academy. So I'm going to try to give you actionable material today, and in the mail out that we sent to you earlier, there's some additional specific information. But the goal is to get you to understand the relative importance of marketing in those 7 plates that you're spinning all the time, but also identify the specific core issues that you have to deal with. Now, this is a fun thing for me to explain. I'm an old school guy. I know my looks belie it, but I'm not 29 anymore. And I came up in the days of outbound marketing. We wouldn't call that. That was the only marketing there was. But there are a number of characteristics of outbound marketing, but it was intrusive. It was, you had to have a megaphone. Hey, let me get your attention. And, it was just the type of media that was available. And there was a lot of guesswork involved in outbound marketing. In fact, I make the point here that John Wanamaker, one of the first major successful retailers and marketers in the United States to go after consumers, was well known, quoted in every marketing school class and marketing book. And I heard this many years ago when I just started in business, and I had to think on it for a while to understand what he was really saying here. Is half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. So he was expressing a frustration that dominated the marketing discussion for decades until the idea of inbound marketing has now come, and that's where the digital internet world of marketing has redefined the rules, and it's an area where metrics rule. And by definition, metrics are designed to take the guesswork out of what you're doing. And they allow you to target what you're doing in a way that's never been possible before. And we're going to come back to that, but just to reemphasize the point I'm making, in the old days, and where I was literally involved over the years of spending tens of millions on this type of marketing, it was very frustrating. You had to make a massive investment. When computer software was for schools was first coming out, we launched a company called Learning Technologies that was ultimately acquired, but we had to make a massive investment and take months of lead time to target by direct mail teachers in schools. And then it was months before we had a feedback to know whether or not our effort was successful. And there was just no real-time response to what you were doing. Now, in that time frame, some TV pay-for-view advertising and cable advertising started to be around where people would know right away who was responding, but it was still a general type of advertising, and this was the age of the Yellow Pages. It fascinates me to be in audiences to speak and see individuals there that have never used the Yellow Pages when it was the heartthrob of so many businesses. And I like to ask, do you see a truck ABC Plumbing or AAA Bail Bonds, and do you know why they're named that way? Well, it was simply to get placement. It was like the Google ads of the day to get placement in the Yellow Pages. But those days, thankfully, are behind us, and the day of cold calling, when I can't tell you how much money was invested by people in the science of cold calling and in the war rooms where people would just call and make. We have the junk calls today, but it was a totally different world then, and particularly when we spent time on Wall Street. I had a number of friends who broke into Wall Street just simply going down a list of names of previous contacts and so forth. You sometimes even see this in some of the movies, but they were out trying to get somebody by intruding in their day on the phone with absolutely nothing but a general idea that they may want to hear what they're saying. So the contrast between traditional marketing is absolutely huge. Different methods, different approaches, different cost, different media. And the phenomenal impact of that is that this is the best time in history to be building a marketing plan and trying to enter a market and reach a customer base. As you can see from this graph in traditional marketing, and I make this point just so you can understand why there are so many people excited about digital today. It's like young people who don't understand the power of electricity never lived in a home that didn't have electricity or indoor plumbing. Well, young people that are building business today based around the internet and digital marketing just can't understand how phenomenal it is to reach thousands of people for free if you choose that path, but for dollars on the thousands compared to what it used to be. Now, that makes digital marketing affordable. It gives you the metrics that are so important. It gives you real-time feedback. You can know in a few minutes. I love Jeff Walker and some of his stories where they do their launch, and when they punch the send button, they're literally watching tens of thousands of dollars occur in moments. Compared with my example, when we dropped a mailing in August to get to people as they were coming back into their classrooms in September, we didn't get some of that feedback until after Thanksgiving, and even then it was erratic and not predictable. But so we had no opportunity to respond or change, or if there was any kind of error. So it allows you to be responsive, and it allows you to reach the global market. One of the things that we used to do in looking at a retail location or a business is we would have a target map, and there was companies that paid you to do this, and it would tell you, okay, in this SIC code or 15 miles from this shopping center, there were 32,000 people of this kind of demographics and so forth. Those barriers and artificial limits don't exist anymore. So, and the other significant piece of this is it's totally scalable. You can launch a marketing program with a $100 marketing plan, and if you've done it right and you make $200, you can turn around and reinvest that into the market and then build it up without taking a huge hit up front, where again we've spent millions of dollars on a marketing launch just crossing our fingers that it was going to produce results. So there's new strategies and tactics in digital marketing, but the thing I want to stress today, it involves the same principles. Now, I like to make the warfare metaphor. People think that warfare today is different, and certainly it is in the weapons that are used and the way those weapons are deployed. But the tactics are exactly the same. The principles behind the tactics that are employed, and we won't chase that rabbit here. I do on some other videos, but if you're going to be involved in an age-old practice, you'll find that there are principles that carry forward regardless. And it's the same thing with marketing. So let's don't get confused or think that the basic concepts behind what you do when you market are different. Now, some of the ways those are applied, however, are different in some of the materials we sent out. And I think this is one of the most exciting things about the digital market is I lump this whole new genre into two areas that I call the long tail and the 1,000 loyal fans. Sent you the material on that, and we won't dwell on this today. We've got so much to cover. But the long tail is that whereas markets used to be driven by blockbusters and vendors could only afford to focus on the top 10%, bestsellers, 30%, whatever that was, and ignore all the rest, there are many, many online free enterprise warriors today that are making a very attractive living off the last 10% of that long tail. And if you don't understand what I'm saying there, make sure you read that material. And again, the concept of the 1,000 loyal fans. Now, this is a principle that's always been there. If you've always had 1,000 people who would spend a certain amount a month with you every year or every month, and you had that where you could control it, then you had a pretty straightforward revenue of business. That's kind of like what a dry cleaner or a shoe cobbler, they've always had that, or a bar, same people coming in. But the ability to do that now globally and not just be limited to a local geographic neighborhood has revolutionized that concept and how it's applied. Now, I want to stress here one of the things, there are several things that we have at JCI over the past couple of decades been transitioning or melding in to the old school, new school, blue ocean strategy, the lean startup, and there's a half dozen like that, the tipping point. But the one that's relevant to us talking about marketing is the story brand concept. And I sent you some basic information there, and there's a link there. I also will be downloading a copy of the Story brand script after this class. But the point that revolutionized part of my thinking here is all of our advertising for most of my career was focused on who we were, why we were such a great choice for that customer, and waving the flag saying, look at our credentials, look at why we're so successful. Well, Donald Miller, I think in a breakthrough way, identified the fact customers want to be the hero, and we should want to make them a hero. So we need to consider our positioning more as the Yoda in their life. Let's find out what their problem or their solution is and help them get to where they want to go or what they want to solve, rather than trying to make ourselves the hero. And that's a significant mindset that affects all of our materials today, even the materials I'm sharing with you and that we have in the Academy. We've rewritten most of it to redirect our thoughts into saying, we're here to help you and share our advice and wisdom, rather than standing up saying, hey, we're the guys that know everything. If you come to us, you don't have any more problems, because that's never the case, even though there's a lot of people out there trying to tell you that. So this all starts with the issue when it comes to marketing, and it's really intriguing. Again, if we use our warfare concept, you don't see any movies about a group of 5 or 6 guys or a company of 1,000 people that were armored and trained said, oh, let's just go start a battle. We don't know where we're going. We don't know who we're fighting. We don't know why we're doing it. We're just going to go out there and do that. Well, I truly have found a number of would-be entrepreneurs and would-be free enterprise warriors that really take that approach. They know in their head, to a degree, what they think they want to do, but they've really never defined their goals and objectives. Now, you'll see here that this marketing mind map extract that we've got and what I'll cover today, extremely complex. And you need to stop and realize that there are trillions of dollars spent every year combined on advertising and marketing and market development and experts and advertising within different forms of media. The Google and Facebook values are based on the amount of advertising spent. So it is a very complex market, and it's an increasingly complex market. And I will say, as one who has watched this evolve over the last 2 decades and has tried to, in fact, it's one of the things that drove us to using mind maps. Today, when you talk about email, there is no one person alive who is a comprehensive email expert. There are people that have a lot of comprehensive knowledge about email, but Google Ads, digital, it's just too complex. And more importantly, it changes every day. I've worked with a number of digital agencies. In fact, one of our other clients, we're working with an agency right now, and at lunch a few weeks ago, we were talking, and when they're really honest, they'll tell you, we do our best, but we just can't keep track with everything that's evolving and changing and new tactics and new opportunities. So I want to tell you, don't feel overwhelmed. The first thing, like when we talk about accounting or operations or corporate, is to get the vocabulary in your head so that when you start building your framework and start getting content, you have a general idea where it fits into your overall needs, but you also then have the vocabulary to talk to the experts that you need to use or the influentials that you listen to what they're talking about. So the first thing, though, let's talk about your goals and objectives. Now, in separate videos, not on this course, I explained the JCI logo, and if you look at it, we're really proud of it because the logo is supposed to tell a story, and Paul really was the guy that broke the code on this. We spent months and did a number of different revisions, but anytime you start a business, there is a period of time before you're in the market where you're spending time and money, and I always put those two together because time is in fact money for 99% of us. Then there's a time you continue to spend as you figure out what you're doing even after you're in the market, which is represented on the crosshairs there. You've gone into the market, and then as you test and strive and figure things out, you reach the point, which is the horizontal line there, where you hit break even, or you're starting to flow positive cash and profits. The key is that red box is all the cash you need before you get to that point. Now, we're going to address this in more detail in the finance section, but it's relevant to this discussion because I wanted to start here to have you sit down with a piece of paper, and I really recommend you stop the video after I go through this explanation. And again, as a part of the download, we'll be sending you a very simple one-sheet spreadsheet that you can take as a spreadsheet and a form that you can print out this blank and sit down and say, okay, what am I really in this business for? Now, because for this course, a number of you are not trying to go public and are really not running major enterprises right now. I've taken the lower scale, but that number could be $150,000 a month. It could be $1 million. But that's, what do I need to have in my bank account each year to feed my family or pay my rent, pay my bills, let me continue building this business? So the other side is, what's my success goal? What would tell me I've reached the point, this business is doing as much or more than I expected, it's more than I could make working for somebody, and it's laid a solid foundation that I've got money coming in that I can reinvest to grow the business, or if I like, just run the business from an island and make that money every year. So just pick that number, and that ranges for everybody. But then you need to pick a sales price for your offering. And again, this could be $10 and it could be $10,000, but the principle's the same. Then you sit back and say, what does it cost me to offer that product? Now, if you're a digital course, your cost of goods sold may be $20 on a $1,000 sale as far as what it really costs you for each sale that you make. Now, you've got development costs that you may want to spread over. And again, that's our finance discussion. But just, you'll generally have a specific cost of sales. One of the ladies we work with in Playhouse, she delivers an assessment, but then there's some physical things she gives you to help you do what you need to do. So she knows for every customer she signs up, she's got a fixed cost of X dollars. Then it's normally lower if you're doing more volume, so I imputed that to make it a little bit more realistic. And those two numbers will give you the margin, the gross margin for your offering. So if you take that to the dollar price, that'll simply tell you, okay, for every sale I make, this is how much cash comes in. Then you need to take against that. Cost of goods sold is a number reflected, is a variable based on your sales. You don't have that expense other than development or maybe printing or some of the things you have to do until you make a sale. Then there's G&A and other that you have every month, whether or not you make a sale. That's your rent, that's your internet, it may be some travel expense, postage, whatever's involved. And I put that low because right now I'm talking about a low-priced internet business, but oftentimes G&A run, and that includes salary, can run 25 to 35% of a business. Now, one of the things we'll talk about in actually putting your business plan together is that you don't have to guess. If you pick your SIC code, and that's now it's a NAICS code, NAICS. We'll get into talking about that. That's an important step for you to do because the government prepares very extensive information about each of those, and it gives you what you should be paying in each of those areas. Again, when we start talking about profitability, we'll explore that in more detail. But that basically tells you that you're going to net from one sale, in this case, $48. So that means you got to make 1,250 sales, daily, weekly, and monthly. Now, again, while this is financially oriented, no marketing plan should be put together until you have an idea of what this means, because you're going to get into calculating my cost of acquisition of a client, my cost of branding, my cost of maintaining that client, and those numbers should relate back to your basic goals. Otherwise, you're just, again, taking a guessing game, and it's kind of like walking into a casino, which I don't recommend, but putting a bet down on a craps table and you've never seen a craps table, you don't know what it is, you may or may not win. But I think most of you that have had that experience know what the probabilities are. So that ties into this red circle on our logo, says that's your startup phase. But what we're talking about today is post-startup. What do you need on an ongoing basis? And that'll also tell you how you need to do this in this phase to start getting to that point. So having said that, now we start learning the language of marketing, and it is a language. Now, you hear me constantly wagging my finger and talking about a plan for business, and you've all heard failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think those of you who've been on the course have heard that no plan survives your first contact with the marketplace. But planning is a part of ensuring you don't just start and survive or struggle. And these elements that I'm going to go over in the next few minutes are a part of that plan. There's an interesting statistic that I want to throw at you. There are one or two companies that I know of who have succeeded without ever initially putting a business plan together. And at some point they did, or that's just as they grew. But they had an idea, did a little napkin deal. In fact, Compact is a Houston company that's legendary for getting started. But I do know for a fact, I've met the professor that worked with them, they ended up having a plan for business. But so there's always those atypical fairy tales, and some of them really happen. That's the beauty of the free enterprise system. However, here's a statistic for you to digest and chew on. One of the most extensive analysis of why companies fail, and we'll talk about that in financing, and I'm one that tells you it's because of the R factor, relationships and people. And in fact, we deal with that every day, even in the last few weeks in our companies and our activities. We've seen the reality of that. And it's another discussion. But here's the number. 80% of the companies that did fail, regardless of the reason, did not have a written business plan. It wasn't that they didn't even follow it, they just never had it. 80%. So right away, that should tell you something about the importance of planning. Now, that doesn't mean that 100% of the companies that succeeded had a plan, but it underlines the importance of knowing what you're doing before you go about doing it. Now, that starts with choosing your marketplace. And one of the things I always stress is a lot of the training you'll get in this area is what we call historical. Look at what's happened in the marketplace. And we teach the same thing. We say, look at your total available market, how many people are out there, look at your target customers. And I sent you the questionnaire that you need to know who those things are. But what you've also got to realize is that there is no static marketplace. I'll look here over on the slide, there's all of these factors that are constantly changing every market you're involved with. And we spend some time developing those. Each of those has a lesson in the Start, Strive, and Thrive Academy. But you need to understand one of the challenges, and we're going to talk about this in the marketplace with the invisible hand, is that a changing market is a good thing. It creates opportunity and it eliminates competitors. Now, for your competitors, you may be the one being eliminated, but the degree to which you understand this issue, you have to start with the target market. And then as the market gives you feedback, evaluate, did I pick the right market? And that's where we get into a lot of the NAICS analysis and evaluation. But then the key is, how is that market going to change? How is technology going to change it? I always like to use the story, and I get told by some of my younger audiences, that's too old, you need to use a current one. So, okay, how about a current one? What if you were publishing the Yellow Pages when Google started? But what if you were, and this happened, what if you were investing at that time what was mega $1 million in a brand new revolutionary horsewhip the day that Henry Ford rolled out his first Model T? You might not have seen it coming, but you can understand and guess why you've got to keep track of what your market is, even if you're the dominant figure in the marketplace. Anybody here ever heard of a company called Kodak? And probably there's one or two of you that are listening that never loaded film in a camera or never took camera film to a photomat or to a drugstore to get it processed, or never saw at the amusement parks the Kodak moment signs. But that was a dominant player in the marketplace that failed in this area to understand there are no static marketplaces. So once you've done all your market analysis, and that is something you can pay somebody to help you do. I'm big on telling you there's certain things in your plan for business you don't want to pay somebody to do, or you want them to help you do it, but you need to be involved. But a lot of the market research can be farmed out, and today with the internet it's a lot easier. The second part of it is, what is your unique selling proposition, the UPS? And the USP, I was just fixing to say I make a mistake sometimes switching those numbers. But that is really figuring out why you're different. Now, we're going to get into this when we talk about competition a little bit more. But there's there are professors like Michael Porter and Jim Atkinson and many others who have spent their careers looking at figuring out how a product can be differentiated or a service can be differentiated in the marketplace. But it's a science, but it's also an art. But they have literally given us some good tools, and I sent you some material in the email to begin that process when we talk about the competitive matrix that leaves you asking, why would a customer pick you instead of somebody else? Why would they buy now? Because if they're not going to buy now, you can be too early or you can be too late. Why would they buy at the price you're asking? And why, when it's all said and done, would they buy from a new kid on the block when they could buy it from an established competitor, possibly at a lower price, possibly at a better quality, and possibly with more comprehensive features and support? You have to answer those questions as a part. And a lot of people say, well, if you build a better mousetrap, that's all you got to do. They'll beat a path to your door. I won't dwell on this. It's a whole discussion. In fact, there's been doctoral theses written in marketing departments about the mousetrap myth. It's an intriguing concept. But you should always remember that Google was like the 18th search engine that was into the marketplace. McDonald's was one of 36 companies and 30 of the other companies were well funded by large corporations. Southwest Airlines came out when the airlines were falling apart all over the world and run by the large airlines. And each of those barely survived is because they did come up with a unique selling proposition, but then they went through the process of surviving till they got the point of actually thriving with that. Why is this the case? And I love to talk about this. And again, I could spend this whole hour on this, and I'm going to have to constrain myself to talk about the invisible hand here. It's one of the things that, as a blue-collar kid, coming through the military, then getting into business and being involved in business, no one ever explained this. When I started reading The Wealth of Nations, and by the way, I don't recommend you do that. It's very dry, but follow up on Adam Smith's work and the invisible hand, it made sense to me. I don't think there's anything emotionally more discouraging than me when I go up to a store or a restaurant that I've gone into, or maybe it's the first time I've been there, and I walk up, get ready to pull in the door, and I see a little 8.5 by 11 letter on the window that says, hey, this store's been closed for non-payment, or this, that, and the other. And a lot of people say, well, that's tough, I got to go find another place. But the reality is that usually means heartache, busted dreams, possibly a divorce, disappointed kids, the disillusionment of a free enterprise warrior who didn't understand that the invisible hand did not care how hard they worked, how honest they were, how important it was to them to succeed, how bad failure would hurt them. The invisible hand is the metaphor or the name for the market. Customers vote with their dollars. And collectively, those dollars Go where customers decide the best offering comes from. And what's beautiful about the invisible hand is that it's not sexist, it's amoral, it's not racist, there are no emotions involved, and it's apolitical. Now, each of those can be involved in any individual business and area, but at the macro level, the reason the invisible hand works is an autonomous, collective reaction to the market. Smith talked about the baker, brewer, and butcher, and he talked about self-interest. And again, that's another discussion. But what you need to understand, you're not just competing with your competitor. You're competing with the invisible hand. And there is a market force out there that will slap you upside the head and knock you down and put you out of business. It is not against you. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't like you. There's nothing you can say or do about eco-friendly or anything else that will change the workings of the invisible hand. Now, you may be able to develop a market niche with your unique positioning around those elements, but that has nothing to do with the market. And again, I'll cut this short, but it's an entire part of the reason we're behind and work with JCI. You have a choice in an economic system. Either the market makes those decisions and you as a consumer collectively vote with your dollars to pick the winners, or some elite somewhere decides this is where we're going to allocate the resources, these are the businesses we're going to fund, these are the efforts we're going to allow to succeed or we're going to make fail. Again, entire different decision, but while it's important for us, we're right now focusing on the framework and content, I always like to come back to the mindset that it's easy as an entrepreneur, particularly if you're in the Elm Street category, and particularly if you're new at this, to kind of think things are working against you. And the reality is, they are. You're not paranoid. If you're not planning, if you're not aware of these foibles, we have a separate session called Landmines, Booby Traps, and Tripwires, where we talk about the things that affect that. But so that gets into why branding matters. Branding is one way to fight the invisible hand. It helps you stand out from the clutter of everybody else. It shows you where to make your investment, and it builds a return on that investment by building that brand. When you think about Coke and you think about Pepsi Cola, the reality is those products, I won't get in the argument with those, somebody always says, oh, no, they taste basically the same to most people. They're essentially the same product, even if they taste different. But their brands represent two totally different approaches to the marketplace. And their brands have a value above and beyond the specific product they introduce, which again is another way to fight that invisible hand. Branding matters because of your customers. And I love to make this point that a lot of people don't understand. Your brand is not your logo, it's not your company colors, it's not your marketing message, it's not your advertising. Now, those are elements that shape your branding, but your brand is what is in the hearts and minds of your customers, your stakeholders, your employees, and those who compete with you. So it doesn't matter how much time you spend in a conference room with high-powered advertising people developing what you want your brand to be. What you've got to constantly measure is, what is my brand from the marketing perception, okay? And this gets into the issue of pricing. One of the great values of a brand is it lifts you above the pricing battle. In every market, and we'll spend a lot of time on this in the long-term course, on pricing. Those who choose to compete on price do not have a customer base, because by definition, anybody who's buying for price will go somewhere else when they can get it cheaper. And there's always somebody who will enter the market offering something cheaper. It may be less quality, it may even be the same quality, but they've got lower costs, or they may simply not be good business people, and they'll be out of business in 6 to 9 months. But in the meantime, they've raked off your clients, and by the time somebody else comes along doing the same thing, you haven't had time to recover. So branding is an important way for you to get out of the pricing conundrum, not to solve it, but is a major factor in that issue. Now, competition. It all comes down at this top level point. This is all stuff to think about before you even try to sell your first product, before you're even really marketing, or this is all marketing. This is before you start selling. But you got to understand, when you go into the marketplace, beyond the invisible hand, you are a threat in 99% of the cases to someone who is out there. And even if your product or service is not a direct threat to an existing competitor, the dollars that your customer have to give you have to be taken from somebody else. So you are a threat to that group, and you can expect them to respond. And the better the business people are in your market segment, and the more competitive your environment is, the more you're entering the market as a threat will generate a response from them. And if your plan doesn't anticipate that response, then you're truly setting yourself up for failure. That's why, again, from strategy, and again, going briefly to the warfare scenario, you can lay out all your plans that you want, but until you go against that enemy and see how they're going to react, are they going to react the way you planned? The definition of a strategy is you don't know how it's going to come out until it's implemented. So you become a threat, and then the market is a threat. That's our invisible hand. The changing dynamics of the market, the economy, so many factors that are a threat. And then the biggest thing, remember our spinning the plates, nothing is static. I know this sounds discouraging, but it's not meant to be. This is the old dose of water in the face and a slap on the face saying, whoa, this is why if I really want to be successful, I've got to take the time to understand this. Now, the Fortune 500 has about $45 trillion in value today. That trillions of dollars out of the trillion-dollar journey came from, in most cases, the beginnings of a small free enterprise warrior like yourself getting into the market and solving these problems over time. But the key is understanding the problem, planning for the problem, anticipating the problem, and then resolving the problem and surviving that problem. So it's only now, and I've got this, of course you can't read this, I've got this huge expansion of the components of a marketing and sales plan. Remember, that's only relevant based on what your goals and your success goals are. You can take that same chart that I just laid in developing your integrated communications marketing plan, and it has 3 basic components. Again, you can find 12, 15, 30, but it deals with this is how you get to the marketplace. This is how you attack the market. You address your digital inbound, your digital with your website, your digital with your social media, and then in most cases, not all, your outbound or traditional advertising, which there's still a place for. You'll still see advertising in some newspapers or TV and so forth, that just general broadcast, but it's all tied into that comprehensive approach. And then a major part of the issue that a lot of people ignore is public relations. That's a great new area. In fact, we're working with Angel Tucci. I've always, from my earliest days, seen the value of public relations. There's a lot of ways to get free publicity or to build your brand, but that's all part of incorporating. And if you ignore that, it's foolish, because it's all part of incorporating that into your overall plan. And then your collateral. And this is down in the weeds, like we like to say, but that's everything from your logo to your packaging to your mail labels. And I really get amazed sometimes when I see people that'll spend tens of thousands of dollars getting into the market, and then they've got schlock materials. Now, again, true confessions, we're in an environment using the lean startup. This has been hard for me when you had to spend millions or many hundreds of thousands to get a marketing piece into the marketplace. It had to be perfect. You didn't have a chance to redo it, and it could represent tens of thousands of dollars. Today, however, and boy, this is hard, you can get by with some typos. You can get by with some less than perfect renditions and have a version 4 and 5 and 6. In fact, you're foolish if you don't, because you can't afford the time and investment to get it perfect. Perfect is the enemy of being out there. But it has to be good enough that it doesn't hurt your brand. And by and large today, I'm just, I won't chase this rabbit right here, but I'm amazed at how the definition of quality is so different today than it used to be. And particularly in post-pandemic, I believe it's going to come back a bit. But even what we're presenting to you with these slides, we would have never dreamed of putting together a course like this with. There's a lot of work and effort into this, but it's certainly not the polished presentation representing a $10,000 freelancer putting it together that we would have normally done in other products. So the idea is you get in and develop this plan, including your collateral, this building your plan and building your brand, and you prepare for success. Then you enter the market. Notice I've talked, what is it now? Almost 45 minutes, and I haven't used the word sales other than in just a general reference. Only when all of this work is done do you talk about getting out there and selling. Because the idea is you do the prep, you do the planning, and you anticipate. Remember what we say, there's absolutely nothing that can guarantee your success, but there are many things that can guarantee your failure. So likewise in the marketing arena, your initial goal is to eliminate as many of the reasons that you're not going to get the sales you want as possible. And then when you get into executing with your sales, you have the metrics and the mechanics in place to enter the market and constantly get that feedback that you're on the right track or changing your offering while you're in this cumulative process of building your tribe, or you're building your customer base, or building your followers. And they're giving you feedback, and you need to be in a position for listening to that feedback. This is so important I've heard this all my career, but never until the last couple of decades has this been so attainable. You can email a client, you can talk to them. Just the feedback we've gotten on this course. I talked to that conversation I mentioned with the advertising agency the other day. We're working with another client that's looking to put a franchise together. And we talked about focus groups. There was a day, they still have them, but there was a day you just didn't go to market without a focus group. And they were somewhat dubious value, but they'd cost you $15,000, $20,000 in those dollars, which would be $40, $50 today, to have a 2-hour focus group. And it gave you some value. But then to actually get to your customers, it was an expensive, laborious process. And companies like Procter & Gamble and they spent billions refining that area. But today, you as a marketer can send out an email through MailChimp and in 30 minutes see what kind of open rate you've got for the initial response, and then who's wanting to be deleted, and then you can email that person, and in many cases even call them, have a Zoom chat, and get immediate feedback. So that curating your market and getting that feedback is so essential. We try to follow that ourselves, and again, that's why we value your feedback here. But the other part of this concept is understanding whether you're in a one-of sales market or a lifetime sales to a customer. Now, if you've ever been on the subway in New York, it always fascinated me. In fact, I've actually found a book written about the marketing for these, and there's a Wall Street Journal article last year about these little stores that at the subway stations run by people that have been working in the subway, a lot of them for 30 years. They sell a pack of gum or the Wall Street Journal. They're not counting on you as a repeat customer, although I did develop a loyalty with some of those people when I'd buy my journal from a certain guy and talk to him for a minute. But they were depending on the traffic Today, with what we're doing, you can also depend on traffic of the internet highway, people just driving by once. But you want to try to be building a customer base, your tribe of people that, and I've been told that maybe tribe isn't a word we can use anymore because it's culturally insensitive, so I'll seek feedback on that. But your customer actually, in most cases, has a lifetime value. If you sold them X, and it's a good product and you deliver it well and they're happy, you can probably sell them Y and then maybe Z, or start at A, B, C, D. So if you stop and think about the lifetime value of a happy customer, that becomes a totally different number than what we had as a $100 sale. You may be able to sell them $100. That's the theory of the 1,000 loyal customers over and over again. You have different products in different ways. That changes the economics of curating or managing that customer and supporting them. And that gets into the issue of acquiring versus nurturing customers. You need to know in your marketing strategy, am I in the business of acquiring customers and moving on, or am I in the business of acquiring and nurturing those customers? And we talk about in our class the lead funnel. You all know about that right now. You have this huge funnel, and as you filter down, you find the people that aren't good buying customers, then their clients or qualified prospects, and then they buy. Well, once they buy, they enter another funnel, and that's a lot of times ignored. And I'll look forward to you seeing that material. But the core goal of any successful marketing program is first to meet your personal goals. Okay, if it doesn't do that, then you need to start over or you need to reassess your goals. Then if it does do that, that puts you in the position of starting to evaluate, now what can I do with what I've built? And we get into talking about exit strategies and long-term valuation later, but I want to make a couple of final points. I'm a marketing guy. I love marketing. I love marketers. Many of you are not salespeople and you're not marketers and you don't like marketers and you're a good product person. We talk about this on almost every one of our sessions, that some of you have 2 or 3 of the 7 Strategy 7 gifts, but you're missing 3 or 4 of the others. Well, the point about marketing is that, and I think Tom Watson that founded IBM is credited with the first guy I'm sure he's not the first guy to say it. He's the first guy that got credit for saying is that nothing happens until someone sells something. So that justifies putting marketing as the first among equals. In other words, they're all important. It's like your kids. They're all the same, but we all know that one of them needs a certain thing, or at certain times in life they have to have a certain level of attention or care. Well, if you don't focus on marketing, you can do all the planning in the world, you can do all the product development in the world, you can have great systems and processes, you can hire great people, you can even raise money. But nothing happens until you sell something. And great things happen when you sell a lot. Now that goes into the reason, however, we need to plan before we compete. This is a little bit different twist. I've used this illustration in different forms. I have one with the Roman general. But the whole point is that the more you plan before you're in battle, the more you bring the resources to bear. Once you're out there and being successful, then you'll have time to listen to and respond to the machine gun salesman that's going to show you a better way to win the battle. Because there's always somebody coming up with a better way to sell, a better way to market, a better product than what you have, a cheaper product, a new product that competes with yours in a different segment. So it's important to understand, and we close with this as a free enterprise warrior. If you are in the situation where all you're doing day to day is fending off the arrows, there's a good chance you're going to lose that battle. You need to execute a battle according to plan, and then as you're in that and going forward, be able to respond to new techniques and new processes as you figure out what is and isn't working. So I'll look forward to seeing at least some of you on the mastermind on Thursday, and I look forward to any of the feedback or comments you can share with me. Thanks.